What's up, everybody? It's Concrete Zebra with Craftmaster Productions and Studio1Tutorials.com here with Studio One Expert, and we're going into part 4 of the hip hop workflow series. This one, we're going to be focusing on getting a quick mix and master and getting your creation up to a commercial volume. Now, the first thing that you want to do is you want to find a really great instrumental to reference with. For this purpose, I use a DJ Khaled instrumentals because I've got them in really good quality and they're hits. So that really translates well to a decent reference track because that's the sound that you want to emulate. Here, when I'm using a reference track, the first thing that I do is I want to analyze it, and unfortunately Studio One doesn't really have a meter that's as thorough as this T-Rex meter that I like, because I use this perceived loudness meter, and we're gonna get to that in a second. The whole point of this step is you want to make sure that when you're using a reference track, you want to have the reference track be the same volume as the track that you're mixing. That way your ear doesn't confuse the louder one for the better sounding one. So we'll have a sample of this instrumental here. Now you see the perceived loudness is up here by -20, and here's our regular track, and you see we're peaking, around -29 or something like that. So what I want to do is I want to adjust the volume of Go Hard down to get that same perceived volume. So now I'll play to compare. All right, so we're about at the same volume right now, which is good. The next step that I'm going to do is we have our drum and our band bus. I'm going to go ahead and add the console shaper in because I want to mix into the console shaper. I don't want to add that after I've made all these changes, and then it affects the mix in a negative way. And so far, using the console shaper, the settings that I use for it for 808s and just the sounds on my drum bus is I have the crosstalk, pretty dialed low, and the drive, I'm not killing it with the drive. Just, a quick little touch of the console shaper, not going too in depth because this is a beat mix. You don't want to spend hours and hours on a beat mix. You want to make something, bring it to commercial volume, make it sound great, something that people could play on a laptop, be impressed by it, sell your beat, and keep it moving. Now we can go ahead and play our track and start comparing it to the reference track. The first thing I look for is the volume of the kick, because a lot of trouble I've had in the past with mixing 808 heavy hip hop and sub heavy hip hop was I would strictly, focus in on the RMS when I go in and put the limiter on at the end, and I could never get a consistent volume. So I'm always conscious of the bass. With this particular song right here, you see that the low end is hitting it about around -30. So we want to kind of mimic that with our mixing choices. So we'll go ahead and play our song. See, we're up a little bit higher. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and back off the volume of my kick. See what that does. And the reason why I choose to match the kick with a commercial track in the bass first is because you're kicking your bass when you go to limit it. It takes up so much headroom in the limiter that if you push the bass too loud, you're not going to be able to get the loudness out of out of the mix bus compression that you want to get, and you'll never get to commercial loudness. So once you sort that out, and you could see you don't have to spend crazy amount of time on doing it when you're with a reference track, because you have to remember this is just a beat mix. We're not making a masterpiece. We're not turning this in to an instrumental album. We're trying to sell this to a rapper. Rappers don't care about the same stuff that audio nerds and iTunes standards care about. So you just got to get that out of your mind. So now we'll just go across the spectrum and just kind of double check. So I'll kind of look for the snare next in the mix. It's usually a pretty high transient in hip hop. I was seeing a lot of action between 2K and 5K, so I'm just gonna go and pay attention to that while we listen to ours. So I'm seeing similar activity. I'm cool with that. I'm noticing when the piano chords hit, we're really having a spike in the low mids to the regular mids. I'm gonna check that against the Go Hard track, see what they're doing. You see in that section, they're not going above -40. I'm sorry. So I'm gonna mess around with the levels of the piano and see how that sounds. That's the thing. Like, this is mixing with your eyes, but you also want to pay attention to your ears. And if I wind up turning this down, I don't like the sound of it, I'm not going to stick with that decision. All right, so right now, I think that this has a pretty decent balance. I can hear everything. The only thing that I really wanted to bring out was this guitar sound here. The delay on it is really cool, and I want to be able to hear that through the mix. So I went ahead and put the Instruments Big Grand preset on and just kind of dialed it in so that I could hear more of that delay. I'm compressing it a fair bit, but you can really hear the difference. Now you can hear that delay, and it's more a part of what's going on in the mix. And I also wanted to add a little bit more of the upper mids and a little bit more of the lower mids. The piano, I went ahead and just dialed in my ping pong reverb and my room reverb that I had already set up in the template tutorial, just to give it a little bit more space. And with the lead, I wanted to kind of dirty it up, so I went into Red Light District, went to my fuzz turn the drive all the way up, and then just turn the output down, the mixes all the way up too, but brought the output gain down. So, because that plugin is dangerous, it makes things really loud. We wound up getting this type of sound. And then in the context of the mix, all right, so then on to making it loud using stock Studio One plugins. I go ahead and add the compressor. Went ahead and used the master bus compression preset. I sped the attack all the way up. The release is pretty slow. My goal with this is just to catch the initial transients. That is why I have the attack so fast. And all I want to do is just kind of glue the kicks down a little bit to kind of make the limiter's job a lot less intensive. So I'm going to go down no more than 4 dB. That's your cutoff. Obviously pay attention with your ears, but if you're new and you don't really know what to listen for, if you're going more than 4 dB on this compressor, you're doing it wrong. Just back it off. Now, when I'm working with this compressor, I'm keeping an eye on my master fader level here, and I want to make sure that my mix is peaking in between -3 and -6 before I get to the limiter. That way the limiter has enough headroom to do what it has to do. So the next thing I do is I will go ahead and add these two filters right here, and I go ahead and I low cut 20 hertz out because I don't need those frequencies, and I'll cut the extreme highs out, so around 17, 18, 19, depending on the feeling of the track. It's not a super noticeable thing. It's just a cleanup type of thing to kind of safeguard you against extreme highs or lows that might cause distortion or take up headroom that you need in the limiter. Now onto the limiter. This one I'll go ahead and I won't have any ceiling, leave the threshold and the release where they are. We'll just go ahead and listen to it. Now, right when you start to notice the gain reduction, you want to stop with this limiter. What I'm doing is I'm doing a process called series limiting, and the Studio One stock limiter, I've pushed it. I personally don't like the sound when I push it. So in order to kind of back that sound off, but give you guys the ability to go ahead and make something really loud so that it can be played, on your beat websites and things like that, inside, embedded players and whatnot, and heard on a laptop or a cell phone. In order to get that, this is the process that I went through without completely destroying it. So once you see this gain reduction start to go down and work, just stop on that one, add another limiter underneath it, and this is where we're going to get the final volume from. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set the ceiling to between -9 or a full dB, and this is because after you bounce these things to MP3, you can get what's called intersample peaks, and you can test this out for yourself. Like, don't do this, bounce something out, bring it into a session, look at it, and you'll see where you're peaking the waveform, and you won't hear it inside the DAW, but it'll happen afterwards. Plus, once you put this on SoundClick and it gets reconverted, you just want that extra space. You're not going to lose a whole lot of volume from this step. even though I'm sure a lot of people are going to tell you that you don't need to do it. You should probably do it, especially if you're into hip hop and you're putting it on SoundClick and SoundCloud and BeatStars and stuff like that. Other people that aren't doing hip hop, they don't have these type of issues. So now we'll go ahead and look at our original track at its original volume and compare the two and see what we have. And that's all there is to it. You just want to remember you're doing a beat mix. You don't have to do a whole bunch of crazy processing, especially to your drums, because your drums are coming from drum kits where these guys who are making them are slamming them and they're already pre-compressed and they've already been treated. So all you have to do is maybe just a little bit of panning. Don't worry so much about that. Just get the balance of it right. Get the balance of it next to a commercial track correct. Give your instruments a little bit of space, check them in the spectrum analyzer, use your ears, light hits on the console shapers, go ahead and do the serial limiting. That way you can get that nice push, but it doesn't sound too crazy. And that's all there is to it. So this is Concrete Zebra with Craftmaster Productions, Studio1Tutorials.com, and Studio One Expert, and we'll see you on the next one.